This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenivek, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
And a very good afternoon, everybody. Yes, indeed, we are across Bloomberg platforms. Carol Masser, Tim Stenivek, live here at Bloomberg headquarters in New York City. Man, what a week. We're going to get inflation reads. We've got a big Apple event. We're going to talk about that in a moment. We've got the World Cup getting underway. And then, oh yeah, wait. What's that other thing that's going to happen?
Excuse me, are we in New York City and is there a basketball game tonight also?
Oh, wait, there's
Are you kidding me?
Wait, and I thought you were going to go to dun-da-da-da.
No, I'm going to the Knicks.
What about the SpaceX IPO?
Yeah, well, you already said that Friday, all day Friday. That's what
I didn't say that.
Oh, I thought you said it.
Oh, I'm so glad you don't listen to me anymore.
Pretty sure.
I'm just kidding.
I don't know.
It's crazy.
I can't hear anything right now, so I don't know what's going on.
We're having a few technical things, and as a gem, as he always is, Tim finding his way through it all. Having said that, we got a lot going on throughout the week. We've got a lot going on this Monday. We're all in on the Mag 7 because we're definitely seeing them move in today's trade. But we're going to get into one of the big tech names, and we're talking about Apple. It is holding its Worldwide Developers Conference. You've been there. I've been there. It's a big event. It's folks all thinking about the Apple platform. Also, there's our Ed Ludlow.
Yeah, we're going to go to him in just a few minutes. We're also going from Cupertino to Rio de Janeiro to hear from the CEO of one of the world's largest mining companies. Gustavo Pimenta is going to be joining us. Our own Lisa Abramowitz, I should say. Yeah. The CEO over at Vale.
That's a way to pick up some miles, right? Go from Cupertino to...
Yeah, Lisa's been there all weekend. The weekend coverage from the airlines was amazing.
All right,
yeah.
So good stuff in case you missed it.
Really great stuff.
Check it out on the Bloomberg. Hey, in the meantime, we've got someone who is an award-winning Michelin chef, has a podcast. She's talked to Francis Ford Coppola, Paul McCartney, Martha Stewart, many, many more. Tina Fey also. It's all in her new book. Ruthie Rogers is joining us from London.
We should have done this from the restaurant.
Hey, team, are you listening?
Are you listening?
Are you listening? All right, all of that coming your way over the next 60 minutes. First up, though, let's get to it. The trade on this Monday. Let's turn it over to Charlie Bell.
All right, thank you very much. Right now, Apple up by 0.5%. The Dow in the red. S&P, NASDAQ 100 index, all moving higher. Chip stocks, they are poised for the best day in a year after Friday's rout. That's all a part of the tech rally we're seeing right now. Keeping it all in context, we begin with the S&P up now by 0.6%, up 46. The Dow narrowing its losses, down now by 5 points, just about unchanged. NASDAQ is up 1.3%. The NASDAQ 100 index up 2%. And the SOX, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange's semiconductor index, it is up now by 6.8%. That, of course, follows Friday's rout of roughly 10%. A 10-year right now at 4.54%. We do have the 2-year currently yielding 4.15%. The 30-year at 5.01%. Gold up $14 the ounce, $43.43, up by about 0.3%. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 0.7%. $91.16 a barrel. Barrel of Brent, $94.27 on Brent, up by about 1.3%. So bottom line here, Wall Street staging a comeback, a Monday comeback as dip buyers emerge, lifting stocks amid renewed enthusiasm over AI and bets that a solid economy will keep powering corporate America. And of course, NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang calling a global tech stock sell-off last week a buying opportunity, saying the build-out of artificial intelligence has just begun. We've got NVIDIA right now taking part in this chip rally. NVIDIA shares are up by 2%. Also today involving chips, Alphabet's Google recently placed an order with Intel to manufacture more than 3 million of its specialized AI chips in 2028. That, according to the information citing sources, the media outlet reported that Intel is receiving orders from firms like Google as the Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing struggles to keep up with demand for its manufacturing capability. Right now, we've got Alphabet shares lower by 1.1%. Again, Intel surging now by another 12.8%. Among some of the other chip names, Micron is is up 10.5%. Advanced Micro Devices up 5.3%. NVIDIA, meanwhile, up by just about 2%. Some of the other stories that we're following for you at this hour. Marvell Technology and Flex will both be joining the S&P 500 in the latest quarterly rebalancing, replacing Pool and Campbell's before the start of trading on June 22nd. Shares of Marvell and Flex, they are both advancing today. Apple investors, meanwhile, monitoring developments out of the Worldwide Developers Conference now underway in Cupertino. Apple shares just turning negative. We've got Apple down by about 0.3%. In the drug industry, Eli Lilly has presented data showing its next generation shot can help patients lose 30% of their body weight over about 2 years. Again, 30%. Companies are looking to challenge market leaders by offering treatments with benefits beyond just weight loss, such as convenience, fewer side effects, and improved results with serious health conditions. Recapping, S&P up 45, up by about 0.6%. Carol and Tim, that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, Apple investors have spent nearly 2 years clamoring for the iPhone maker to make a big splash with artificial intelligence. So the question is, are we getting it? We do already have some headlines that have crossed the Bloomberg and are on our live blog about Apple's annual Worldwide Developers Conference, which is underway in Cupertino, California. And that's where we go and where we find our own Ed Ludlow. He's co-host of Bloomberg Technology, Bloomberg Tech on Bloomberg TV at 11 a.m. Wall Street time, Monday through Friday. Ed, good to have you here with Tim and myself. 1 p.m. keynote. It has been underway for over an hour. What's new and interesting, and are we getting answers when it comes to AI and Apple?
What's new is Siri AI, a rebrand. It comes in the form of a standalone app. That is new. It has more of a chatbot style interface. That is new. And these are the features that Apple for a long time was promising that eventually Siri would be able to deliver on. Like the share move in the moment was so interesting because a lot of this, right, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman has reported this would happen. He basically nailed every single detail. But on, the pre-recorded, it's a pre-prepared, pre-recorded keynote. The moment Siri AI goes up on the screen and even confirmation it's a standalone app, the stock goes to a session high 2.7%. We're now softer by 0.5 percentage point. And so I don't know whether you guys would call that sell the news kind of situation, but really interesting to see like Apple demoing things that everyday people would actually use, things that are actually useful, rather than some kind of hype or hyperbole. Stop not buying
what,
it,
Ed, when it comes to AI and the way that Apple has embraced or has not embraced AI at this point?
Yeah, so one of the key features of this, or at least the key points of technology, is that Siri AI is interoperable between the different OSs. So you can use it on your iPhone through iOS, carry it over into a piece of work or project on Mac OS, iPad OS, etc. You get the idea. That is useful because if you are on an Apple device user and you're using its operating system for your email, where you work, your photos, you can drag it around. And like that actually is something that they demoed quite a lot. What is interesting about this, like you guys know what Mark Gurman's like, right? How he would describe things, and I'm trying to play it straight down the road. But the thing that's really interesting about it, and they kind of flicked at this in the Top Live blog, a lot of this functionality, it's already available in the market that Apple's trying to go after, which is, Gemini can do a lot of this, and ChatGPT, not just as underlying technology, but as tools. They already do a lot of that interoperability. But yeah, it was quite convincing.
All right, convincing, quite convincing. That's a big step and an endorsement. What's missing, though, here?
Something just barnstormingly new. Again, with the added context for your listeners that if you think through the lens of why the stock's behaving the way it is, this is kind of selling the news. A lot of what was announced has been out there. So, for example, this generation of Siri AI, the underlying foundation model is in cooperation with Google and Gemini. A mix of Apple's in-house models and Gemini as a model. We knew that was going to be the case, and it's been confirmed as being the case. But it does seem to be like something that's allowed Apple to make Siri more interesting. And what they're doing in each of the phases of the presentation is basically saying, like, how would you sit at your Mac, or how would you spend time on your phone and actually use it? And it's just kind of logical stuff. For example, if you're writing an email, open Siri in its chatbot form alongside the email draft, and it will tell you whether it's good or not in exactly the same way as Microsoft's Copilot currently works in Outlook or Gemini works in Gmail. That already exists, but at least it's comparable and it puts Apple in the game.
In another world, Ed, like maybe a generation ago, we'd be speaking about the new version of Mac OS. In this case, it's Mac OS 27. It's Golden Gate. They always name it after some sort of landmark in California.
Still has a name. Yeah.
Is there anything notable that makes the Mac ecosystem work better? You already talked about Apple AI, and I think that's a big part of it, but makes the Mac ecosystem work more well with the iPhone ecosystem and the way that the operating systems are typically unveiled at these events?
Yeah, again, don't underestimate the Siri, that they've been able to make Siri across the board, that you can jump from one OS to another. Like, people really cheered that on. What you're getting out, it's still called Mac OS, but this year onwards, it's iOS 27, iPad 27, Mac OS 27. It just gives them the same calendar year or generation year, which developers, I've spoken to a lot of developers today, they actually think that's tangibly useful. But with Mac OS, retaining the name Golden Gate, what they have done across the board is basically go under the hood and try and fix things that make the system really just perform better. So I'm going to give you one tangible example because it's one that resonated with me, which is AirDrop across the board is now 80% faster. How many times have you kind of been there awkwardly, like, okay, I need to get photos from you onto this device, and you sit and you're like, is it coming? Is it coming? And then it happens. Little fixes like that, optimizing the system, making it much faster. With the consumer and the developer, that really resonates.
Speed and seamless.
I love that. Finally, news you can use, right?
Exactly. Ed Ludlow, thank you so much. Bloomberg Tech co-host out there in Cupertino there, of course, at the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference. Just a few heads also crossing. Apple says new Siri AI launching in beta later this year. Says Siri AI will not initially be available in the European Union. Also says Siri AI and new AI features not yet coming to China. So, and that stock is bouncing around right now. It's a little bit lower after rallying earlier, Tim.
Okay, so that's a little bit of the tech talk for this Monday. Now to a little bit how tech is changing how we work and who actually, Carol, gets to work.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is such a big topic. Just ask anybody who recently graduated. So let's get to it. Because that recent round of graduates, man, and commencement speakers who have been talking a lot about artificial intelligence in their speeches to the class of 2026. And as they did so, often to a not very receptive audience. First up, you're going to hear from Gloria Caulfield at Tavistock, followed by Scott Borchetta, CEO of Big Machine Records, and then you've got the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, wrapping it up. Listen up, everybody.
The rise of artificial intelligence is the next industrial revolution.
AI is rewriting production as we sit here. I know it. Deal with it. Like I said, it's a tool. Hey, like I said, you can hear me now or you can pay me later.
So today we stand on this edge of another technological transformation. I know what many of you are feeling about that. I can hear you. There is a fear.
Talk about reading the room
who can blame
in the wrong way. Yeah, exactly.
Truly, they're the ones trying to get jobs right now, and they're hearing that entry-level jobs are being hit by AI.
Yeah, Businessweek, Bloomberg Businessweek has done a whole bunch of stories about the recent grads and how they are having trouble finding jobs. So it's not easy. Again, that was the former chairman and CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt. Before him, Scott Borchetta, CEO of Big Machine Records, and then Gloria Caulfield was kicking it off. She's VP of Strategic Alliances at Tavistock. Let's get into the labor market. With us is Corey Cantega. He is head of Economics Americas at LinkedIn. He joins us right here in studio. Corey, good to have you here with us. Are those leaders right? Are they not reading the room well?
The labor market right now is running slow. There is an open question about to what extent is that AI. And I think those leaders, from their point of view, they're just looking at the opportunities. But there's also risks, and I think that's what the students are responding to. So you have two folks who are trying to have a conversation potentially there, but they're really just talking past each other. Because on the opportunity side, we see lots of jobs being added. We see that AI hiring is outpacing the overall labor market by 30%. But when you look at the areas...
What types of jobs?
AI engineer, forward deployed engineer, AI integrator. These are roles that are about building and maintaining and supporting the AI ecosystem. And of course, there's a ton of data center jobs that go along with that too, about 500,000 that we've seen added over the last few years. So on that side, there's lots of opportunity. A lot of growth in the US right now is being driven by AI capital expenditures. There are a lot of jobs being added to the AI ecosystem. But when you look outside of AI, when you look outside of a few areas like healthcare, there's just no momentum in the labor market. We see hiring 20% lower than what it was prior to the pandemic. And if you don't already have a job, it's really difficult to find one. And that's what I think a lot of grads are experiencing and feeling. And when they're told that it might be AI is the reason you can't find a job, of course they're going to react that way.
Where's the area, at least, of where students do not want to be? Like the majors that are not getting jobs, the careers that will no longer exist because those jobs are being taken by AI. What are those?
We don't know what those are yet. Often when we have a conversation about AI, we just forget about the economics and throw it out the window. Just because AI can do something doesn't mean that it will. It's really going to depend on those costs and benefits, which is why when you hear economists talk about, well, what's AI going to do? What's going to take over? At the moment, it's too early to tell. There are, of course, some areas that we see are particularly weak on LinkedIn, like back-end developers. And we see forward deployed engineers is very strong. So those folks who are focused, they're software engineers, they're solution software engineers, but they're much more focused on AI integration. Whereas back-end developers, they're focused on that classical cleaning up your coding base, fixing bugs, all of those things that AI is actually quite good at. So there are obviously some areas where we see the tasks that you need are shifting, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're being wholesale displaced.
I feel like for a liberal arts student, you're like speaking a different language with all of these forward deployed engineers.
I was thinking, like, I would have been probably screwed.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
You'd be surprised how many art history majors end up in the Goldman Sachs Research Institute. A lot of
I wasn't art history, I was economics, but I think about anything that's data intensive. I mean,
but even doing that research today with LLMs, able to do research?
Yeah.
A lot of jobs today, which are very data-oriented, data-focused, they're actually more accessible to people with liberal arts degrees. If you can use LLMs well, you know how to prompt them, you know how to vet them and evaluate the outputs, that actually has made these occupations more open to you.
Well, I think of one of the conversations we had at Bloomberg Technology in San Francisco that said that maybe the liberal arts, I can't remember who it was, but it was...
Well, Daniela Amade at Anthropic has talked about this a lot and the importance of liberal arts.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering, if we're going to circle back to this just being curious and discovery. I mean, it's part of what I like about journalism is there's something new thrown at us every day and we get paid to kind of research it and find out about it. But you have to kind of figure out how to ask the right questions and so on. How do you see it, or is it, again, too early to know the impact of AI on the labor market?
One of the big concerns that I've seen folks express, particularly around education, is the development of critical thinking skills. Mm-hmm. If we offboard those onto some automated tool, you need experience to develop judgment, to develop that human judgment that takes place in a lot of roles. And you see this when we think about, well, you ask employers why they're not hiring. So, well, I can't really use junior folks right now. I need people who have judgment, but you need to build those people.
Right.
Those people have to be developed over time. So if you're an employer going out and saying, I'm not going to hire entry-level workers, well, eventually you will have a problem.
Right. Can't go up the ladder if all those rungs at the bottom don't exist unless you can jump pretty high. Corey Katanga, thank you so much. Head of Economics Americas at LinkedIn. Come back soon. The Global Grab, when we come back, specifically when it comes to critical minerals, we've got the CEO of one of the world's largest mining companies. We head to Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, in just a moment when Bloomberg Businessweek Daily continues.
It's 2:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Dow Industrials back in the green, barely up, under 0.1%. Little changed on the day, higher by 4 points. Both the S&P, NASDAQ 100 index, they are all advancing. Chip stocks poised for the best day in a year after Friday's rout. Indeed, dip buyers back in the market. So here's where we stand. S&P right now at 74.29, up 45 points. On the S&P, that is a gain of about 0.6%. Dow Industrials Industrials flat on the day, higher by 9. NASDAQ up 313. That is a gain now of 1.2%. The NASDAQ 100 index up by 2%. All of this with the SOX up by 6.7%. The VIX below 19 now, and a 10-year at 4.54%. The 2-year 4.15% on the 2-year. The 30-year 5.01%. Spot gold trading higher by 0.4%, $43.43 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude gaining today up 0.9%. WTI 91.32 a barrel, Brent 94.25 up by 1.3%. A rally for Bitcoin, 63,563 on Bitcoin. It is up by 2.8%. As we've been reporting, Apple makes it official. It has unveiled the next generation of its AI platform, including an update to its Siri digital assistant. Apple shares down now by 0.8%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcast. I'm Charlie Pellet. Carol and Tim, that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. It is one of the big narratives of the last year, a signature policy of the second term of the Trump administration, and that is shoring up supplies of critical minerals and commodities, including iron ore, pellets, copper, and nickel. It's become, Tim, though, really a focus for countries and governments around the world.
On that, we're going to head to the Bloomberg News Bureau in Rio de Janeiro and to one of the co-hosts of Bloomberg Surveillance, Lisa Abramowitz, sitting down with the CEO of one of the world's largest mining companies, Gustavo Pimenta, the CEO of Vale. Lisa, take it away.
Thank you so much, Tim, Carol. I am here in our beautiful Rio office with Gustavo Pimenta, the CEO of Vale, the world's biggest iron ore miner and one of the biggest iron miners just in general around the world. At this critical time, as Tim and Carol were just talking about, there has been this rush to any kind of critical minerals and to secure it for security reasons, as well as the infrastructure build out. How much more demand have you seen just recently?
Look, the amount of demand, first of all, good to see you, Lisa. The amount of demand is super constructive. It's historical for us. I think across all the critical minerals we are seeing, and a very strong support from clients all over the world, from countries in terms of looking for security of supply. Iron ore continues to be strong. If you look at copper, nickel, so across the board we are seeing tremendous amount of demand for all of the mining that we produce.
The bulk of your customers typically come from China. Have you seen more interest recently from the United States?
We are. China continues to be a strong market for us, very relevant for everything we do, but we are seeing growth outside China. We are seeing growth in Southeast Asia. We are seeing growth in the US, Europe. So there is a diversification going on these days, with other markets looking to amplify their access to critical minerals.
People talk about a commodity super cycle. Iron ore hasn't participated as much in terms of the price gains, and there has been a sort of plateauing in demand from China. Where are the growth opportunities specifically when it comes to iron ore?
So we continue to be very optimistic about iron ore. If we step back and look at the overall demand, we have population growth, we have industrialization, we have other markets growing. Certainly China probably has plateaued and reached their overall peak in terms of production. They are doing more than 1 billion tons of crude steel production annually. We think they will continue to be at that level, but we are seeing growth in Southeast Asia. India is growing substantially. We're expecting India to double the crude steel production in the next 10 years. Even the US is growing. So we are seeing more demand outside China. China will continue to be the key market for all of us, but we are seeing greater demand in other markets as well.
You've seen your copper production increase, I believe, 5 to 10% of total revenues over the past 5 years. You've talked about wanting to double it again over the next 10 or so years. What does that entail in terms of investing in existing mines, in terms of acquiring new assets? What exactly are you looking at?
Look, we are very optimistic also about the copper demand. I mean, the electrification of everything, which is a secular trend, data centers, all of AI, this will require an enormous amount of supply from copper. We in Brazil are sitting in a tremendous endowment. Vale has a great endowment, especially in the north of Brazil, to produce more copper. We've been doing, last year we did about 380 kilotons. We want to double this to about 700 kilotons. There is an enormous opportunity for us to accelerate the development of the critical minerals and the deposits that we have in the country.
Well, does that require acquiring other companies? Does that require investing large sums in existing mines?
So for us, it's more about brownfield, because the unique advantage of Vale is the fact that we operate with very efficient capital intensity for the projects, because I have the rail, I have the port, I have the entire infrastructure. So for us, it's more about developing near mines and the brownfield around our existing operations. So it's less about M&A, but more about unlocking the potential that we already have.
What about rare earths? Brazil sits on the biggest reserve of rare earths behind China. Are you planning to expand into that at all?
Look, we've been studying if this is something that would make sense for Vale. We do have certain opportunities in Brazil that we are assessing. For us, there are some questions that we have to answer in terms of scale. Can we compete with some of the international players like the Chinese? So this is something that we are currently assessing. I would say our biggest bet is to focus on what we are good and have scale. At this point, iron ore, copper, and nickel, but we're keeping an eye open for other opportunities as well.
Are there any countries or players in countries that would be interested in assisting you to build that out, given the fact that there has been this focus by the U.S. on developing national security and sort of getting reserves?
Certainly, a lot of investors, international investors, local investors that want to partner with us. And we have a few examples here in Brazil and outside where we are working together to unlock, because it's a lot about accelerating the development of what we have, especially in the critical minerals agenda. So we are certainly open to discussions with partners that are willing to come and co-invest with us.
What about the price of oil, given the fact that you have to move all of these very heavy materials from one place to your major customer, which is over in China? Has that hampered demand at all?
No demand, no impact on demand. I think what we had, since we are more distant from our end user or end client, which in this case continues to be China, our most relevant consumer, especially for iron ore, we had an impact in the overall cost for our transportation of the iron ore. Now, but when we look at the overall pricing for commodities, and in particular case for iron ore, price has increased more than the impact that we had in our cost, because the marginal producers have been impacted more than Vale. Vale has long-term affreightment for our vessels. We are hedged on the fuel cost. So the impact for us hasn't been negative. In fact, we had a margin expansion as a result of the conflict. But we continue to monitor that very closely.
Is there a limit to how much customers will accept in terms of price increases?
Look, certainly we have to see. I think at this point there is no impact in demand destruction. We are not seeing. The markets continue to be solid, strong. Clients continue to produce. We have to continue to monitor to see to what extent they can absorb the price increase. But at this point, we are not seeing impact in the overall demand.
You have a pellet manufacturing place in Oman,
Yep.
and it has been taken offline as a result of simply not being able to ship the pellets out from the area due to the conflict there. What is your plan in terms of reopening that?
Look, we are ready to reopen. Certainly, we are monitoring the conflict, and we want to make sure our people are safe, and that's the most important thing for us. It is very well located. Oman has a special strategic location, even within the Middle East. We have a great asset. It's a pelletizing facility, which is very important for decarbonization, for a lot of the energy transition discussions that we have. We are, in fact, as we speak, doubling the capacity of that facility. At this point, we're waiting for the conflict to end or to reduce in terms of the potential impact for us to resume our operations. We continue to be very optimistic about the Omanian operations that we have, and we think that could be a hub for a lot of the clients that we have in the region.
So this hasn't pushed out your ambitions at all for the region or curtailed them in any way, the fact that the conflict has kept going?
Not particularly with Oman. We continue to be very committed, and we think it's a great market for us to have, to serve India, to serve other markets, even Southeast Asia. So it's a very strategic asset that we have.
Are you still confident about your full year forecast for costs? Do you expect that to stay where it is?
So, as we mentioned before, I mean, the overall expectation for the year is great, actually. I mean, we had a very strong first quarter production across the board, and all commodities are trending very nicely. We had a record production in copper, nickel, and iron ore in the Q1. So I'm very optimistic about the full year performance. We did have an impact in the overall cost base given the fuel cost, but overall margin has expanded. So I continue to expect a great year for us.
You've been in the business a long time in terms of commodities and energy production in general. Do you have any analog to this period in terms of the super cycle that you're seeing and the demand level that you're seeing from clients?
Look, I think what we've seen for iron ore back in 2010, 2014, that period with the super cycle is what we're seeing in the critical minerals. But the more I look into, the more we discuss with clients, I think the opportunity this time around is even greater. So I think we are in a unique moment of our history, Vale, particularly because, look, we are located in a country that has an enormous endowment, very well positioned from a geopolitical standpoint. I mean, we do businesses with the US, with Europe, with China. We have an enormous endowment. We have the infrastructure all in place. And the demand is growing across the board on all critical minerals. Even iron ore continues to be very strong. So we are very optimistic. I think it's great to be a miner these days. So we are very excited with that.
Gustavo Pimenta, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
That is the CEO of Vale, Gustavo Pimenta. And Tim, Carol, I'll send it back to you.
All right, we'll take it. Hey, Lisa, thank you so much. Safe travels back here to Bloomberg headquarters in New York City. If you missed any of that interview, be sure to check it out. It'll be on the Bloomberg and also at Bloomberg.com, but really plays into what has become a very strong narrative over the last year. If you think about national security, whether it's rare earths, whether it's critical minerals, you see nations, you see governments thinking about what they need to make sure that they have what they need in terms of manufacturing, because if you think about something like rare earths, right, and semiconductors in pretty much everything we own, it feels like, but all of this is very, very important. And we're seeing that even with oil, right, and energy as a result of the U.S. war in Iran.
Well, Carol, speaking of what people need, it looks like investors need chip stocks today because they are out there and they are buying them up. Chip stocks are poised for the best day in a year after that rout that we saw last week. The stocks right now up more than 6.9%, close to 7%, with some stocks in there making big moves in the double digits.
And I will say a big reason why is Intel. If you take a look at that name specifically, it is soaring in today's session. Just quickly, on a percentage basis, it's up more than 13% today, 112.52. We know the stock has been on fire this year. It's up more than 200% as we speak. But the reason for the bump up today and really helping to lift the overall chip trade is that Intel has gained on a report after the information posted that Alphabet's Google will rely on it for more than 3 million specialized AI chips in 2028. So Google deciding to tap Intel to make some of its tensor processing units after months of testing the chip maker's technology, that according to the information.
Okay, so I'm also looking at shares of Apple because they're actually lower today as the company continues with its Worldwide Developers Conference. Shares of Apple were up as much as 3.3%, now down about 1%. A little bit of a lukewarm reaction to this new Siri and AI platform.
Yeah, stock up about 12% year to date. We're going to talk more about Apple, too, at the top of the 3 p.m. hour. Meantime, we are a little bit more than an hour and a half from the closing bell. Coming up next, we're going to talk food, comfort. It's all in a new book.
It's 2:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We've got stocks holding on to gains. The Dow barely. It is up now by just 1 point, swinging between gains and losses. S&P, though, let's keep it all in perspective. Up 40 right now to 74.23, up by about 0.5%. NASDAQ, though, on the NASDAQ 100 index, that is where we are seeing substantial gains. Tech stocks are staging a rebound today. We are seeing a comeback as dip buyers emerge. S&P up 0.5, NASDAQ up 1.1%, the NASDAQ 100 index up now by 1.8%. All of this with the stocks up 6.3%. The semiconductor index was down roughly 10% on Friday. We've got the VIX holding above 18, a 10-year at 4.54%, the 2-year 4.14%, and the 30-year 5.01%. Gold up 0.2%, 43.37 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude rallying up 0.5%. That's 91.02 a barrel. Brent 94.07. It is up now by just about 1%. Marvell Technology and Flex will be joining the S&P 500 in the latest quarterly rebalancing, replacing Poole and Campbell's before the start of trading on June 22nd. Shares of Marvell, they are surging 12.6%, all part of a broader chip rally today. We've got Flex shares up now by under 0.1%. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. Carol and Tim, That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, she is an award-winning chef, co-founder of a Michelin-starred restaurant, author of 13 cookbooks, a native New Yorker, has a podcast where she talks with the likes of Paul McCartney, Tina Fey, David Beckham, Mel Brooks, Martha Stewart, Francis Ford Coppola, Mark Carney, Bob Iger, Johnny Ive, whose comfort food, by the way, is peas.
Okay, I like that.
Who would have known? She has also, full disclosure, talked with Michael Bloomberg, of course, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. She has talked with many, many folks. All of it comes together in a great book. It also comes together like a great meal with amazing company. Her new book is entitled Table 4 at the River Cafe, which, as we understand, is a highly coveted physical table located near the restaurant's open kitchen. Here to tell us about it and more is Ruthie Rogers, co-founder of the River Cafe in London, host of her podcast, Ruthie's Table 4. She joins us from London. We are so delighted to have you. We know it's a little bit later there in London. Congratulations on the new book. And we were thinking about where should we begin? And if you had to pick one single thing, Ruthie, as to where you are today, why you got there. Your restaurant, iconic, well-known in London, award-winning. You've got now a 5-year-old podcast. What might that thing be?
I think that, from the very beginning, we started with the values of a restaurant. What is a restaurant? Why do people go to restaurants? What do you look for in a restaurant? And I was just downstairs just now, and I see that the way people are greeted, the way people are made to feel welcome, of course, the food, we change the menu for every meal. We write a menu, rather like you do at home, we see what is fresh, what we have, we bought the day before, and what, of course, always what is in season in the Italian market. So I think every day is a different day. We have great people working here who the whole kitchen is open. And so there's a kind of way that we all work together. And I think, we want really people to come to your restaurant and leave, I always say, quite simply happier than when they arrived.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about, for people who haven't been to the restaurant, the coveted Table 4.
Well, you know what? Michael Caine always used to sit at Table 4. Mm-hmm. But then, when Nancy Pelosi came in, we sat at Table 1. And there might be a table somebody who prefers table 10, which is near to the entrance. Table 4 is slightly also a pun on the word for. So it's a table number, but it also is a table for Michael Bloomberg, a table for any of the other people who are in the book. Because what we wanted to do when we had to stop the restaurant because of the pandemic, we wanted a way to reach the people who ate in the restaurant. How could we reach them? We thought about reading a recipe every day. And then that segued into the story, because when you think about when we talk to people through the lens of food about their memories, it's very thoughtful. It brings back, if I asked you, did your mother cook? Did your father cook? Did you go to restaurants? It brings up other stories.
I love that aspect. Being from a large family, food was a big part. My mom loved to cook, and especially around holidays, birthdays,
Mm-hmm.
A relative in town, she would cook and make sure there was things for everybody who liked, even if she had to do like 5 different vegetables to make sure everybody was happy. But we would sit, Ruthie, at that table for hours. And I feel like that's where you're coming from.
The best things happen around a table, I think, very often. And the sad things happen around a table. Sure. But I think it is around a table that we all meet. It doesn't matter. We could have a sandwich around the table or a drink around the table, but there is something of that conversation. And when we interviewed Elton John and David Furnish, the woman who worked for his chief of staff, who said she'd worked with and heard so many interviews over 25 years, but it was only when Elton started talking about potting peas with his grandmother, or how they tried, the people who use food, to seduce, to impress, to give joy, to share. It's, and I'm also, I meet a lot of women who don't cook or men who don't cook, and that's fine. It's not about the cooking. It's about somehow being together.
Well, let's talk about the podcast a little bit and the way that these interviews have come together in this new book. As Carol mentioned, a host of names. These are not your favorites. These are just some of the interviews that the publisher picked. We should
I have to make that really clear, because so many brilliant people are not in the book, but they'll be in volume 2.
Well, what is the connection between the podcast and the restaurant, and the way that you try to bring what you bring to life in a restaurant to an audio format that you invite people to sort of be at the table with you?
I think there are two things. I think a friend of mine came into the restaurant the other day and he said, oh, I'm having trouble with one of my children. I'm not sure that I can join this crowd. Look at this room, Ruthie. There are so many people at this table looking so happy and celebrating. And I said, if you went to every table in this restaurant, everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. It could be a happy story that daughter might have graduated, or they could have been fired that day, or their mother might be sick, or, there's so many stories that people have. And I think what I wanted to do is talk to people and have their stories told, as I say, through the lens of food. And you discover we have different sections. We have the chapter of food is family. And so we have the McCartney family. We have the Beckham family. We have the Harry Russell and Matthew Rice. We have, and that's families. We have the art, food is art. And we have Tracy Emin, and we have Johnny Ive, who's a designer. We have the political art, it's politics. We have, as you said, Mark Carney. And it's not about famous people. It's not about celebrities. It's about people who have stories that we all want to know about, And so I think it's quite democratic,
Yeah, it is. It is. And the approach is really fun to kind of go through. I want to ask you, though, I think your first podcast was back in September of 2021. Jake Gyllenhaal, was it Jake? And if so, why? How did that come to be, and why Jake being the first?
Well, Jake is a really good friend. I've known him for a long time. And I said, would you do this with me? Because I don't really know what I'm doing, but we're going to try and do this podcast. And it really came from my husband and I used to give evenings, one every year, in which an actor or a singer or a writer would perform in the living room of our house. And we would give the money to charitable cause we believed in. And one night we had Ian McKellen. And Ian, he told an anecdote, he sang a song, he recounted something that had happened to him in the theater. He did a sonnet of Shakespeare. But the last thing he did was to get one of our cookbooks, the first cookbook, and read a recipe for a soup. And I always say a recipe is half science and half poetry.
Right.
And to listen to a recipe is actually, there's something rather beautiful about listening. So I said to Jake, help me out here. And so he did one, the first one, I think, and it was Wes Anderson, who's another good friend, and Ed one.
Listen, Ruthie, we have to jump and go. 10 seconds, though. What's your comfort food?
My comfort food would be probably pasta with tomato sauce.
A good one. Ruthie, thank you so much. We've been looking forward to catching up with you. Ruthie Rogers, co-founder of the River Cafe in London. Her podcast, Ruthie's Table 4, her new book, Table 4 at the River Cafe.
You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenivek on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
All right, everybody, we are getting ready for the last hour of trade on this Monday, June 8th. Carol Massar, Tim Stenivek, live here at Bloomberg headquarters in New York City, bouncing around definitely off our best levels of the session, still up about almost 0.6% on the S&P 500. Call it pretty much flat on the Dow, just up about 5 points. NASDAQ 100, though, it is back in favor among investors, up 550 points, a gain of almost 2%. Leading the way, safe to say, if you look at the NASDAQ 100 index, those chip names definitely outperforming, Tim.
One stock that is not outperforming today is Apple. It's down 1.2%. It was up as much as more than 3% earlier in the session. Investors giving a tepid reception to the next generation of its AI platform. It's key to the company's bid to catch up with Silicon Valley peers. We're going to talk to Anurag Rana in just a few minutes about that.
I think we all want to wait and see exactly what the impact, because we've all struggled certainly with using Siri. Having said that, I'm Carol Massar along with Tim Stenivek. Let's get a look at some stocks on the move. Here to do that is Bloomberg News Equities reporter Natalia Kenijevic, and she joins us here in studio. Good to have you here with us. Semiconductors, they are definitely on the move to the upside.
Exactly. So shares of Intel, the ticker is INTC, are up by almost 13%. So the information reported that Alphabet's Google will rely on about 3 million chips by 2028. We still don't know if those chips will be manufactured by Intel or packaged by Intel. Some analysts are actually saying that that could be a pretty big risk for a company like Alphabet to rely on Intel in terms of production of such a big amount of chips by 2028. But again, of course, we know that this move comes as TSMC just can't keep up with this huge demand for chips, and we also see that it's been reflected in the stock price. Intel is up by almost 440% on 12 months basis. So we'll see how this plays out, and again, with these big ambitious plans from Intel to produce chips here.
Right, that has been a really big initiative for Intel in terms of really boosting its manufacturing business, right? Actually, the manufacturing of chips.
Exactly. But again, like analysts I spoke with are saying that potentially the first few orders will be packaged. They will deliver chips from TSMC, package it here in the US, and sell to customers. How far away we are from the moment when Intel will start producing, we still don't know.
Okay, Intel, a stock that is moving higher. Not every stock, though, moving higher. You're looking at an energy firm that's in the red today.
Yes, which is actually quite interesting. The ticker for that one is FRVO. This is Fervo Energy. This is the company that went public in May. It was really very, very well received. The stock jumped by almost 35% when it started trading. So the company also raised about $2 billion. Now, today we got analysts' initiations. Most of them, I'm looking at ANR function on Bloomberg Terminal, are buy ratings. The price target for 12 months is sitting at $46 per share. The stock is now at $34. However, analysts also say that again, like demand is there. So this is a geothermal company, which means that they derive energy from Earth, and it's been not really popular over the past few years because it's been very expensive.
Well, pretty wild moves today. I mean, it's up as much as 3.7% earlier in the session, now down 7.6%. It was down as much as 7.8%. So, yeah, quite a swing.
Yeah, but anyway, we also should point out that despite the fact that it has really big agreements with customers like Shell or Google, this business is still unprofitable. We saw when the company reported earnings that net loss was sitting at around $70 million, and it was wider than a year ago.
Yeah, you know, it's just, again, another form of energy or producing energy, but it does feel like it's taking a while to take off. And as we said, you can see investors' hesitation. There's buying, there's selling. Some dramatic swings in today's session. Hey, now let's switch on over to Avis.
Yes, so this stock, the ticker for that one is CAR. The shares are up by almost 5% today. We saw an upgrade from Barclays, so analysts are saying that they saw some positive fundamentals in the first quarter. They expect them to continue in the second quarter. They also see some potential for guidance raise. However, guys, we should keep in mind that this is a very heavily shorted stock. Yeah. Just before this segment, I checked with S3 Partners. This is the company that compiles data on short selling. They told me that about 30% of all float is now shorted. We saw that this stock has been all over the place, really volatile. On a year-to-date basis, however, it's up by 46%. And another thing that I'm keeping an eye, the biggest share of revenue for Avis comes from the US. We have the World Cup, and that could also potentially be a kind of, tailwind for
don't drive to the game at MetLife Stadium.
I wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
Get an Uber.
Take the expensive train.
Right. You probably don't want to get an Uber either, right? Because you don't want to be on the roads.
I don't know.
I mean, sorry, Uber. Like, maybe you do. I don't know.
I don't know.
Have a helicopter.
I'm going to go to the watch party in Central Park with 50,000 of my closest friends.
Are you really?
No. We're going to do something with the kids. Yeah. It's not going to a game, I can tell you that.
Natalia, thank you so much. Natalia Kinijevic joining us with Stock Movers. Check out our Stock Movers podcast, 5-minute episodes of the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Find it on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcast.
I'm looking at shares of Apple. They are lower as Apple unveils that new AI. Anurag Rana is joining us in just a minute, talking about why investors are giving that lukewarm reaction to the new Siri and the AI platform.
We're also going to get a take on commercial real estate, a different view. So that's coming up in the next hour.